great thing about him is he sleeps like 3 hours a night. So there's really no reason that he wouldn't. Like, God, I still remember his phone number. It's 970. He wanted to make sure that we all knew that in case he needed us or we needed him to bail us out of jail. He gave it to everybody. I'm always up, so you just call.
That might be the opening of this episode.
Oh no.
No, I won't put his number out there, but that's pretty funny. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer, and this is episode number 31. My guest for this episode is Aaron Given. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening and for your support. If you find value from the show and haven't already done so, please leave me a rating on iTunes. You can also follow the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're really loving what you hear, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Mark J. Connor. Now, on to the episode. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Would you mind telling the listeners who you are and what you're doing?
Sure. So I am a middle school band director located in Central Ohio. I teach in the Olentangy local schools, which is a really large growing district just north of Columbus. And I've been doing that for, I guess this is year 9. There was a quick break for some grad school. And then I went back to the district. So I've been doing this for a little more than 10 years, all told, but 9 in my current spot.
Have you been doing middle school band for the entire 9 years?
Yeah. So because the district is growing so much, the job has changed a little bit over time. But yes, middle school has always been a part of that. There have been years when I've been an assistant at the high school, and I did an assistant marching band supplemental for 6 years, and I just gave that up 2 years ago. We had the second kiddo come home, and it was just better for me to be here more for that. But I've done a little bit of everything.
Sure. So what does your day right now look like?
So I am the director at 2 middle schools in the city of Powell, and I spend my morning teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in one school, and then I get in my car and I zip over to the other one, and I do 7th grade lunch duty and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade band over there.
I see. And so how many bands total?
So 6 a day.
6 a day, from beginners to advanced intermediate, you'd say?
Yeah, like my 8th graders usually end up somewhere in the like 2.5 to 3 ish. Last year's group really was fantastic, and we ended up even beyond that. But yeah, some kids are starting from scratch. Officially, our district does band in 5th grade, but it's once a week in small group classes during their lunch recess for 20 to 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't count as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, sure. So do you start them as beginners as 6th graders?
Yeah, we kind of give them the spiel, and I talk about Green Bay Packers and Vince Lombardi telling Bart Starr, "Men, this is a football." And I know if those guys won their Super Bowls and they needed a restart every year, then we definitely need a restart. So we're going to go back to day one, and we're going to put your clarinet together without bending the bridge key. Sorry, go ahead. No,
I was going to ask, do you find that do you have many that actually have progressed that can audition out of that, or are they all beginners?
So there are always a couple who are more advanced. Auditioning out is tricky because our system doesn't allow for overlap. Like I don't have ability-based groups. Like I have a 7th grade band and an 8th grade band, and the only time the overlap is really a thing is if like by some dumb luck, the stars align for one of those kids, and they can be in another place when another teacher can be with them. Do you know what I mean? Like, so their math class lines up with my 7th grade band, or in a way that they still get all their credits and do that stuff.
Yeah, sure. It's the dance of the schedule.
It really rules a lot of things. I'd love to go to ability-based grouping. I think the guidance counselors might have a stroke if we tried to do that.
Yep. Sure. Yeah, the difficulty of that. So tell the listeners about how you got your start. So what was your early years as a child?
So I really, really did not want to be in band at all. But my parents, God love them, knew what was best for me. They were both teachers. My dad was actually my middle school assistant principal when I was in school. And they said, you can be athletic and you can do those things. I really thought I was going to be a sports star. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", and I was always athletic. And I thought that was going to be my thing. And I didn't want to do music. That wasn't cool. And I didn't want to. And they said, well, if you don't do music, you're not doing anything else. So you may as well get over that right now. And so they dragged me off and they said, you can go to band or orchestra tryouts. They're both tonight. What are you going to do? And delightful 11-year-old child that I was, fine, I'll go to band tryouts. I'm not doing an orchestra. Because that was I don't know why I thought band was cooler. I don't know what my 11-year-old perceptions were, but I had seen the middle school jazz band come over, and that was kind of cool because there were drums and guitars, and so I would try band. And I got there, and there were big lines of kids lined up next to all the instrument tables, and I tried the trombone, and that didn't work at all. And the band director, who was amazing. I had a fantastic middle school band director. Her name is Kathy Joseph, and she's kind of a legend. She's in the Colorado Bandmasters Hall of Fame, and was actually one of Tim Lotzenheiser's students at Northern Michigan University back in the day.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And so she grabbed me by the shoulders, and she looked at me, and she said, boy, you have no lips. What are you doing on a low brass instrument? Go play the French horn. I don't even know what that means, but all right. And I went over and I blew 4 or 5 different partials, and everybody made a big deal of it. And I was like, oh, well, all right then. If I'm going to get positive attention, then I'll stick with it. And from there, the rest is kind of history. I just ducked to water and loved it, and got to do all the honor bands and cool stuff. And she invited me back my senior year of high school. We were on a block schedule, and you got credits really fast. I could have graduated early. And so she let me do a work study. She worked it out with the district to get me paid to come over and help her with 6th grade band as an aide or an assistant. And I got to start teaching while I was still in high school. And it felt really good, and I really liked it, and I was kind of good at it. And so I headed off to the University of Northern Colorado, and then ended up in Ohio, and started my teaching career, and haven't really looked back.
Cool. So we talked a little bit about, before we started recording, about you being in Greeley in Northern Colorado.
Yeah.
And working with Ken Singleton. What was that experience like?
I feel really, really fortunate to have had a chance to work with him. I a lot of times the director of bands at a university with a good music school, I don't want to say that they're inaccessible, but they're just so busy, and there's so many things, in their life that you just don't get a lot of time, regardless of how much they might want to offer it. And with Ken, he came to marching band camp, and pulled all the freshmen out of the Pride of the Rockies marching band, and sat down and had lunch with us and said, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and you can take a lot of different paths, but what you need to do is decide who you admire here, and then go spend time with them and do what they do, whatever it is. Just do what they do, and you'll be successful. Go to class every day, find good people, and do what they do. And then he kept tabs on us, and he showed up, at symphonic band rehearsals, and he still teaches the concert band, the lowest like campus,
sure.
no audition required.
Yep.
He conducts that and the wind ensemble, and he loves them both. And I don't know. I can't say enough good things about Ken. I learned a lot. He does. Do you know him well? He does the Denver Brass and his chamber music and all this stuff.
I've never met Ken. I have gotten a message from him. I have 2 pieces with Grand Mesa Music,
right?
And he records the recordings for their catalog.
Right.
That's the only contact I've had with him.
Gotcha. He's fantastic. He runs a double woodwind quintet. That's kind of like a training ground for the wind ensemble. He pulls kids out of, it's mostly freshmen and sophomores that he sees potential in. And he gives them harmony music and coaches them. And it's from 9 to 11, Tuesdays and Thursday nights after your regular day. And people, cut throats to try and get in because, he just knows so much. And I learned how to listen and how to play in an ensemble and how to be a second player and how to be a first player, and, lessons every day that have served me ever since. I can't say enough good things about Ken.
So is there one lesson from him that you have taken into your teaching that you might want to pass along to the listeners?
Just his decency and his commitment, not just to the music, but to making you understand the music, and his hunger and his fire and his knowledge, and how bad he wants you to get it, like he gets it. You know what I mean? He's not just a conductor, and he's not just a good musician or even a good person. He's like an evangelist. He wants you with fire and brimstone to know what he knows, and like will do anything he can to help you get it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story. So now, how about you? You've been teaching for 9 years. Do you have something that you'd like to pass on, sort of in that vein?
Man, working in middle school, it's all about compromises, right? Because they're kids and they don't know yet what they want and what they need, even, or necessarily even why they're here all the time. And I feel like my job is to just make them want it more every day, to give them like another taste of something really good, whether, and I know that they're not all going to play every day for the rest of their life, but I just want them to get a little bit more each day and stay hungry so that we can keep them moving forward. Like, this is off the top of my head and I ramble, so I'm not going to be offended if you edit this down.
It's okay.
So I don't know, if you really, really care, it will help them care. And you have to keep trying. Like they probably won't get it the first time. Right. And they might not even get why you care for a long time. But if you just kind of have to care relentlessly about the music and about them and about their experience. And eventually that will get through to at least some of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I had a college band director named Dan Heestand, and he was kind of towards the end of his career, and actually we didn't know it, but at the end of his life, while I was there, and he had these things that he called Heestand's homilies, and one of them was you have to care about the students. What he said is you have to love the students, and of course he meant platonically. But the notion is that if they think that you care about them, or let me rephrase that, if they know that you care about them, they'll respond to you. But if they think that you're indifferent to them and what they need, then you've lost them.
Right. And that's true. There's that old trope, right? No, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, which is true. And it's such a balancing act because they're so fragile. You have to care not just about their well-being and stuff, but about the quality of their work, and because they don't know if it's good or not, and some of them have never really you can do pretty okay in math in middle school and just like not work that hard, right? But so like I don't know. I tell my kids, like, every day you walk in here and I tell you you're not good enough for 45 minutes, and every day you leave with a smile. Like, how do we do that? You know what I mean? Like, that's basically my job. But if you really are coming from a place where you want them to improve, and you're couching things well, and the criticism is not personal, and they can see how they're going to benefit from it, they'll take a lot. They can take a lot, as long as it's authentic and you're doing it from a place of caring.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you give me some day-to-day examples of how you do this?
For me, I don't know. I was listening to your interview last week with Chris Bernatas,
mm-hmm.
and it was really interesting because he was saying, like, I'm always a teacher first. I'm always a teacher first. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because I feel like for me, it's just the opposite. I'm always a musician first. And what I really love is the music. And I really, really want them to love the music too. I want everyone to love music, right? And so what that does is it makes me just super eager. And I think that the enthusiasm that I have for what we're doing, like, they just get caught up in it, whether they want to be or not, really. And I'm willing to make a fool of myself. And like, the thing that happens in middle school is you have to do things 1,000 times, right? Like, they haven't learned really how to practice, and they haven't had enough repetitions. They haven't put in their 10,000 hours for expertise, right? And so you have to like cajole them into getting all these repetitions, but you have to disguise it. And so I'm pretty silly in class, especially with the younger kids. And we have like running jokes and gags and stuff. And so, like, yeah, we're going to play warm up number 4 again. But this time we're not going to sit like we're jellyfish, because you have evolved and you have a spine, and we're going to use it today. Right. And so really what I'm doing is harassing them about their posture again, like again and again and again, because you have to sit up, because you have to breathe. Right. And we're going to we're not just going to fill up our lungs. We're going to blow up our meat balloons. Right? Like, because you can't sit slumped over it. Your lungs are balloons made of meat, and they think that's silly. I don't know why. They just do. Right. And so, like, if you can catch them with just a little bit of like razzle dazzle personality, the pedagogy is more tolerable, and the grind of no, do it again. No, sit up taller. No, breathe deeper. Oh ho. Right. Like, all of that stuff, it's just a little easier to swallow. And before long, they're sounding good, and we're making music, and then you can go fast and do new stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I think when I think about Chris's interview and him talking about being a teacher first, I think Chris just puts himself in the frame of mind of being a teacher all the time.
Right.
It's interesting, because I think that, when I look at myself, I'm a college professor, and I love to teach. Teaching is what I do, and I've done for 20 years now. But I still look at myself as a composer, because the composing lets me be a teacher. And I just think it's semantics, though, when we get into it.
I think I understand what you're saying, and certainly Chris is a great musician, and I don't want to say that that's not it. But I remember I was in an interview for the job that I have now, and the guy said, you're a middle school teacher first. And I thought, well, I don't think that's true, because I've been a musician since I was 11. Right. And one day I'll retire, but I will always play music. Like, until the day I die, I will consume and create music somehow. Mm-hmm. And I respect what he was going for, because what he was saying is, you have to care about the kids, and you have to be a part of our mission. And that is true. And I don't think of myself only as a musician, and the pedagogy really matters to me. And the kids really matter to me. But I'm always coming at it from a place of, how can we make incredible music for me as much as for them? Like, mm-hmm. I'm kind of a selfish teacher. I really want to make good music. And okay, well, I've chosen to be a teacher because I care about the music. And so, like, how am I going to get through my day teaching middle school? Well, I have to get them to be really musical because that's just what I value the most, right? Like, I want them to have a good experience, but the good experience comes from experiencing good music, I think. And so all the pedagogy and all the teaching kind of comes back from that. It's all built in reverse. Well, what I want to hear them play really long, beautiful phrases with natural rise and fall. Okay, well, what do they need? Well, they need command of their air, and they need command of their instrument, and they need a frame of reference, and they need to have heard good phrasing, and they need to have the technique so that they're not playing wrong notes, and so it all just kind of spins back from how do I get to make really good music with 12-year-olds every day. It seems like an oxymoron, but it's worked well for me, and I think because it's authentic in me, it's okay. Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Sometimes I think some of my colleagues roll their eyes because I don't know, like I really love Beethoven, and I make my 7th graders listen to Mahler and or like Steve Reich or whatever. And they're like, I have a master's degree in wind conducting from a Big Ten university. And they're like, who does this guy think he is? Like, what this weird little maestro? But like, it works, and they can be musical. And if you give them opportunities, like, you can have a kind of satisfying experience. Mm-hmm. as a middle school music teacher.
I agree 100%. That's actually exactly how I taught when I was a teacher. I taught for 4 years in a all boys private school. I managed to get the girls' school across the street to come and build the program that way.
That's great. That's cool.
But when I got there, I had an undergraduate degree, and I had gotten 4 years, 3.5 years through a music ed degree. I had done everything but one of the methods class. I think it was percussion methods, and my student teaching was all I had left. And I quit. I quit the degree. I went to general music composition because that's what I really loved. And after my master's degree, I had an opportunity to go teach at that school, and I didn't have that education degree, but I was able to go in there and just rely on what I knew from my education degree, but also my musicianship. And I made it a point to just be the best musician I could be for those kids and model that.
Right. And you work it backward from there.
Right. Exactly.
You can watch YouTube to figure out how to get a kid across the break.
Right.
At this point.
Right. And there are fingering charts. You can figure out what all those keys do on the clarinet. It's not hard.
And when you think about it, really, like, all great musicians have been teachers, right? Like, Carl Czerny, has students that trace, studied with Beethoven, trace back generations, right? Like, to Haydn, to Mozart, all of those guys were teaching. Guys were cutting each other's throats in Vienna to get a spot in those studios. And yet, like, it's also, Don Giovanni. And so I don't think you have to compromise as an educator. I don't think you have to give up your artistry because you teach middle school, or at least I refuse to. I think that if it comes to that, I think I'll have to find another way to make a living. Mm-hmm. If somebody says, that's not what we're doing here anymore.
Sure. You mentioned the word giving the students an experience. Giovanni Santos talked about this in episode 28, and he's building his program at La Sierra University around the idea of giving the kids an experience in the ensembles and in the instrumental program. Is there a way that you're doing that for the middle schoolers? What music are you doing, for example?
So I like to play stuff that is interesting to me. And we have these really long rehearsal cycles, right? And it's not always technically, at least for me, I like to think, challenging. So, like, the repertoire is the curriculum, and you really have to dig in there. And so I really try to push them outside of your, ABA overture kind of stuff. So this fall we're doing my 8th graders at one of the schools. We're doing a Julie Garou piece, The Bonsai Tree, which is just really lovely and a little bit, it's got the pentatonic thing going, but it's just so well constructed because she writes great music. It just happens to be a grade 2.5. Right. And then we're doing The Machine Awakes, Stephen Bryant. which is great for their, like, pedagogically, it's great for their time. Like that thing is not slowing down. It's not speeding up. It's going 60 beats a minute. And it's way better than a metronome for that.
And how do you like, manage the electronics on that?
So I've got a pretty decent speaker set in my room and a bass amp. And at the moment, I have a really cool little like $13 Bluetooth receiver plugged in and routing that stuff around. So it all goes, he wrote that cool little app that you can download for 99 cents on the iTunes App Store. And I just run it right from the podium on my phone.
Cool.
Yeah, it works great.
And it's portable enough. You can bring it to concerts and...
Yeah, that we're going to have to get out on stage, and we'll see if I'm close enough to, the soundboard and stuff to get the Bluetooth in range. I might have to do a little hardwiring when we get closer to that part of the cycle. But for rehearsal, it's great. Yeah,
I want to add some electronics to a beginning band piece, but I haven't taken the plunge yet. So I'm glad to hear you're doing that.
Yeah, and there are other things, like I've played paper cut, which is a little bit fussier.
That's Alex Shapiro.
Yeah. That, like, the electronics in that are fussier, but it's still doable. And people have come up with some pretty, like, if you Google that piece and the electronic setup, like, people have come up with some pretty interesting little hacks to make that work in a variety of situations. So I wouldn't shy away from it. Cool. There is a really interesting dissertation that's, God, what was his name? At the University of Kansas, like 5 years, like maybe 2013. And it's a survey of electronics in pedagogical band music, like up to grade 3. And if I can, and if I can scrounge up his name, I think I'm nerdy enough to have it on my phone. Possibly. So
well, you can send it to me. I could put it in the show notes.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
Well, it's usually expect electronics in the higher grade pieces, not necessarily the young grades. That's why I'm a little reluctant to put it in, because the piece I want to put it in is like a half grade, like first six notes kind of piece.
But so what I've thought about this a lot lately, because I just really like new music in general. Like, you should write music that kids might actually encounter in their life in the future, right? Like, you're doing them a service. That's something that they're not going to think is weird or off-putting later because they did it. Like,
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, maybe that'll be the reason that they listen to the Live from Le Poisson Rouge, podcast down the road, is because you gave them stuff to do with a laptop or an iPhone in 6th grade band. Like, maybe their teacher will let them listen to, Ecstatic Waters or whatever, and you're opening doors that you can't even imagine. Like, that's what composers are doing now. That's what professionals are doing now. It's a part of the landscape for, musicians. And why should we make them play stuff just because it's always been played? You know what I mean? Like, the world is different, and it will be even more different when they grow up. I don't know if we're doing them a service by playing only the old stuff that they always played. Not that I love Holst dearly, right? Like, all the Holst first suite, we listen to it the second week of my Friday listenings. We listen to something every week, and it's always the second week because it's a great piece that inspires them, and it's a great way to teach them, like, how a composer thinks. Those 16 variations in that, and then all of those things. It blows their mind. But people aren't necessarily writing the whole first suite now. And there's a lot of stuff that we want them to be able to appreciate and consume down the road. So I say go for it. Find a way, and I'll play it. Like, I don't like. We'll make it work.
Sold. So how about, what's the cell phone policy? And this is a purely personal question. What's the cell phone policy like at your middle school?
So it depends on the class. Basically, you can have them bring it. I teach in a pretty affluent school district, and all the kids have a phone. The default policy is that they're supposed to leave it in their lockers powered down, which does or doesn't happen. sometimes, right? But
Yep.
The school district has also figured out that it's a lot cheaper to let them, or to put in like an everybody Wi-Fi thing and let them use their own devices rather than going one-to-one, since they all have them anyway. So we do let them bring devices to class for specific projects or things that we need to do. We do chamber groups, and yes, you can bring your phone to use as a metronome and a recording device, and all of those things. Like, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I won't give away my plans, but I also have another idea for cell phone and band.
Okay. Yeah, that makes me think a little bit of Eric Whitacre's Deep Field.
Oh yeah,
right. Like,
yeah.
you could put a QR code in there, and like people in the audience, you could print the QR code in the program, and you could get audience members. Like, if there was like a hardwired thing or like an aleatoric thing where people could actually participate, you could break the fourth wall.
Yeah, this is true. All these thoughts. Not enough time, of course.
No, right, of course.
Yeah. Okay, well, cool. That's pretty interesting. So what are you doing with your advanced band right now?
So we are, the first concerts in November. We just finished up like the high school marching band recruiting thing. We threw that together in a week. So I've got them doing, I think I mentioned that Julie Guru piece, and we've got some Stephen Bryant, and we're doing a Grand Mesa piece just for fun because the concert comes up around Halloween. Troll Dance, which is really cute and funny, and puts them through like a bunch of styles all in like 3 minutes. And we're doing a transcription of Elsa's because it's good for them and it's good for me. Like a grade 2.5, I think it's Robert Longfield or something like that. But we talk about grammaticism and sustained sounds and all that good stuff. But a typical day, it starts with some technique work. I'd love it if they all took private lessons, because we're an affluent school and they're high achievers. They're very busy. I have kids who, no joke, have like private hitting coaches for their travel baseball team. Like, they're taking, instead of clarinet lessons, they take baseball lessons. A lot of the parents are, professors or, doctors at Ohio State, or, CEOs of, like, I had the CEO of Cardinal Health, Fortune 500 kid in my class. And they just live busy lives. And so it's not that I've accepted that they're not going to practice as much as I'd like, but if I want them to have technique, then I have to do it there. So we tend to use, depending on the group, I prefer to use the Foundations for Superior Performance, which has, workouts in all 12 keys and range builders for brass players and finger exercises for woodwinds and chorales, in 6 or 7 different keys. And it's really useful. And if we spend a week in each key around the circle of fifths, and then we go back and we groove it in, and over the course of the year, they can play in all 12 keys, knock on wood, and or at least act like they can play in all 12 keys until they, leave for the summer and it goes away. But so we start with 10 or 15 minutes of long tones and lip slurs and all that good stuff. And then we do, usually I don't usually get to all 3 pieces in a day. I usually choose 2 and dig a little deeper. And then we kind of do that on a rotating basis. And then Friday, we always listen. Every week, and that takes the place of some of the technique on that day, and it's meant to be a treat because I want them to just really enjoy the process of listening. I want them to be good consumers of music as much as anything else. Cool.
So now, how you said that this concert's coming up in November?
Yeah.
And how many cycles of concerts do you have in a year?
So it depends. I kind of am stuck at 3 right now. We do a November concert as opposed to an October and a December. I've done that in the past, and the older kids are usually ready, but the 6th graders coming in from scratch, I just don't. I like to take my time at the beginning, and I don't like to rush them out on stage and have to compromise like all those quality repetitions and to build technique just so they have something to do on a concert, if that makes sense.
Right.
And
Sure.
So by November, we've usually got them to the point where, they function independently enough to play like a grade half, one piece of real sheet music. So they feel like they're doing something. And then we do like a little informants where we take them through all the stuff we've done up to this point in the book. Here's what we sounded like on the first day. And here's what we learned. We learned how to sit up. We learned how to control our airstream. And then we sounded like this after a week. And then we learned some new notes and fingerings, and we could play a tune. And so here's number 25 out of the book. And so by November, I feel like everybody's in a place to be successful. And but it isn't so interminable, like waiting till that December. Like some of my colleagues wait till December. And that's just too long a grind for me. And for them, like we've been doing the same stuff for too long at that point. We need to move forward.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So November is kind of in the sweet spot, and it saves me the trouble of actually having to program a Christmas concert. Like we'll play holiday music for fun, and the 8th graders get to play at an assembly, like a holiday assembly, and so that gets them a chance to learn new music quickly. So we have a concert like the second week of November, and then we have like 3 weeks to get ready for the holiday assembly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit more real world, authentic. Like you have to figure this out quickly and put your skills in place.
Yeah, and it's a bonus concert for that group only.
Right, and they get the recognition of being out there on the gym floor in front of the whole school and stuff. So it's kind of it's great. It works pretty well.
Cool. So I saw in your bio that you have worked with some composers on commissions.
Yeah. I think probably one of my favorite things about being a musician is the collaboration. And that was probably my absolute favorite thing about doing a grad degree in wind conducting, was just getting to talk to other musicians and make it a group effort. And I didn't want to lose that when I got out of school. And so the first commission we did was with Scott McAllister.
Mm-hmm.
And we bumped into each other at a workshop, the Ball State Conducting Workshop. He was the featured composer of the weekend, and just in one of his talks happened to mention that, like, I always wanted to write something for middle school band, and my jaw kind of dropped. You think about the stuff that he writes otherwise. And he's like, I just think it would be fun. And I'm looking around the room to see if other people are reacting. And like, if I'm going to have to elbow people out of the way to be like, hey, you can write for me. And nobody else even walked up. Nobody approached him about it. But I did. And he was really excited. And he wrote us a great piece. It's called Images, 6.5 minutes. Just super tightly constructed, and some really... He thought it was important to help explore kind of some different sound palettes for them. And he was really collaborative. He Skyped in a bunch of times, and we had a Google Doc where the kids could give him their inspirations and ideas, and he would try to fold those into the piece. And we actually were able to fly him in, and we rented the hall at Ohio Wesleyan University and gave the world premiere with him in attendance in a 1,000-seat auditorium with the big organ on stage behind us. And it was a really incredible experience. My high school kids still, when I bump into them, still talk about that.
You gave them that experience we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. And they own that now, right? Like, that's theirs.
They'll never forget it.
They'll never forget it. And it's on YouTube. And like, I go back and I check the views every so often. And it's not like thousands of views or whatever, but like, they comment, right? Like, that was was so cool. Like, I know nobody else is watching that. It's just them. And that's great.
I'm going to link it. So the five
cool.
people who are listening will watch it. No, I'm just kidding.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. It was an incredible experience. And so since then, for my 8th graders, the kids who have gutted it out and like put up with me harassing them for 3 years, I try to give them kind of like a capstone experience each year. And it's not always a commission. Sometimes we'll have like a guest clinician come in, and I always like I was talking to you about Milt Allen the other day. Do you know Milt?
No, but I did send him an email.
Good.
And he started teaching in St. Louis, and he got back to me. He told me he's going to the Aleutian Islands for a few weeks.
Yes. Yeah.
So he said he'll get back to me when he comes back.
Good. Yeah. And you should hear about that too. He's doing cool stuff, but he's here in Columbus and he's just fantastic. And so we worked out like a residency with him a couple years ago. And so he came in twice a week for like 6 weeks and he conducted my concert. Like, I didn't conduct at all. He conducted the whole concert, and I rehearsed when he wasn't able to come in and kept them on track. But it was his show, and they got to work with, he was the associate director of bands at Ohio State and director of bands at Eastern Illinois University, and was conducted all over the world. And they played a piece that he commissioned with Mike Sweeney the third day. And he took them down the rabbit hole on that, and they had an incredible experience. So we try to do something unique and meaningful that's gonna kind of, I don't know, like I want them to be really inspired as they're leaving my program, and in the hopes that like momentum carries them across the gap and into high school.
Yeah, sure.
Again, with these really high achieving kids, there's a lot of pressure on them to do other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to take AP Chem, and AP Bio my sophomore year. I don't have time for band. And the thing is, they actually do, but they don't realize it yet. Right. And so if we can just get them hooked on all these experiences, and we can just leave them on a high, the kids who make it across don't quit. And since we've started doing these experiences, I've had a lot more kids make it across.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. Okay, Aaron. So what are the challenges facing music education and band in the 21st century, and how do you think we can best meet them?
Oof. Yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot this week, trying to gear up for this. I think this is going to sound highfalutin. The devaluation of the liberal arts education. It could just be the bubble that I'm in. The push towards vocational training is kind of intense, I feel like, right now. The idea that school is meant to get a kid ready for a career, and my district, it's a great place to teach. Lots of smart kids and lots of great teachers, but the push is college and career ready. And STEM, we have a STEM academy. We don't have a STEAM academy. We have a STEM academy. And the value of the arts and humanities as a thing that makes you a more quality person, that enriches your life and the life of our society, I worry that it's fading. And the thing that the only answer that I can come up with is that I have to breed a bunch of kids who love it so much that they just refuse to give it up.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Like that's all I can do is like, I have to make them want it so bad that they scream bloody murder to their parents, who then scream bloody murder to the districts. Right. And I think that's all we can do, is just make ourselves, irreplaceable.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I have so much to say on this. I get so frustrated when I hear about music and we, and there's nothing wrong with the idea of trying to give people tangible and quantitative reasons why music is valuable. But at the end of the day, music is valuable because it's music.
Yes.
Because music in itself has value, not because it makes us smarter, not because it improves our test scores, because it's valuable as a thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like music's not the only thing. The arts aren't the only thing, but the liberal arts, as you mentioned, the humanities, the idea that somehow having a philosophy degree or taking a philosophy class is somehow bad for you, or learning about anthropology is bad. Oh God, I could get off on my soapbox for hours on this one.
Right. Yeah. I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah. We're preaching to the choir to each other here.
Sure. It pains me when arts advocacy groups take that route of, well, music makes you smarter and it raises your test scores, and like, no, it makes you better. Like it makes you more compassionate, and it makes you more empathetic, and it helps you like understand things about yourself that you couldn't understand before. And that should be good enough. Dang it.
Right. And now listen, I don't want to criticize any of the advocacy groups that use those things, because I think it's part of an overall strategy.
It is. It's a, it's
a package.
The politics have to be played, and
of course,
like ultimately, do you want the thing to exist or don't you? And does the methodology really matter? Right. I've always been a bit of an idealist. I have to step back and take a breath and realize, like,
yeah, well,
mostly we just need it, right?
Yeah. At some points, at some point you have to win a battle,
right?
However that is.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that. So what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self if you could go back and do it again?
First thing, I feel like this is good for a lot of music majors. I would have allowed myself to play less and practice more. That I think about that a lot. I was playing in marching band and wind ensemble and brass ensemble and horn quartet and the double woodwind quintet all in one day sometimes, and it really wrecked my face. Like I just didn't practice as much because I didn't have the chops at the time. So I should have said, I was afraid to say no because I was afraid the opportunities would dry up. And I don't think that that's true now. Like, I don't think that if I had said, I just can't take this, I can't play this semester in this ensemble, like they wouldn't have ever let me play in it again. So that would be one thing. The other thing is that, like, you don't have to change everything or fix everything right away. I cruised into the job and I knew I was good at what I did, and I had come from Southwest Ohio working in Kettering and Centerville doing things for them, and they're great programs, and I saw what I had to work with, and I was like, oh, well, this isn't working. We could make this way better. There's an easy way to fix this. And so I just tried to do it all at once. And there were people who didn't think there was anything wrong with the way things were going. And I should have been less arrogant, and I should have understood that there's time, and that saving these relationships right now is going to make your job easier in the long run. Like, yes, what you're saying might be ultimately correct and might generate a better program, but you have to work with people, and it doesn't matter how much you want it or how passionate you are or how eager. I should have taken more time, and ultimately it didn't help me reach my goal to take that route. It took me, I had to eat a lot of humble pie those first few years and rebuild relationships that could have helped me meet my goals sooner.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good advice. I'm actually in a new job, a 1-year position at the university where I am. And I run into that. Sometimes I get a little overeager to do the things that I see. And you have to step back, and you have to make sure that you're listening to other people and hearing the problems that exist there that you may not understand.
Yeah. Just because you have a good idea doesn't mean, like, you and it goes back again, right? Like, they didn't know me. It doesn't matter how good the idea is. Like, you can't walk in and tell someone they're wrong or that they should stop doing what they've done for 20 years because you're here now. Just because you're here. Like, and it was foolish of me to think that they would accept that at the time. I just should have taken a quick second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It's good advice. So what's your favorite work for wind ensemble or band?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think the most fun I've ever had playing a piece might be Philip Sparks' Dance Movement.
Oh, cool. That's a good...
Yeah, it's just rip-roaring fun to play. I'm a horn player, and that fourth movement alone is fodder. I really like the way you asked the question to Jerry Junkin a couple weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
What would the last piece you wanted to conduct be? And I was thinking about that.
I'm thinking about reshaping the question in the future to ask it that way. I just haven't gotten around to putting it on my sheet that way.
I get it. Maybe the Dvorak Serenade. In that case, it's just it's exquisitely lovely, and I just enjoy it every time when I play it. If I get a chance to conduct it, it's just maybe that would be one to go out on, and I would feel really good.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay, cool. So now, knowing that this is going to come out mid-October-ish,
mm-hmm.
is there anything upcoming that you'd like to share or promote or leave for the listeners?
Sure. So if you really like listening to me talk and get all excited and worked up and kind of ramble a little bit, I am doing 2 sessions in a row at the Ohio Music Education Association Professional Development Conference in Columbus in February. And the first one is on how to commission a work for the first time, and how to reach out to composers and collaborate with them and make that a meaningful experience for your students. And the second one is actually with a composer that I collaborated with on how to get your students to improvise and compose using chamber music and a skeleton structure that he wrote for us and then came in and coached. So we're going to talk through that process and help other people use it so their kids are making their own music for themselves.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be great. So I hope some of your listeners are in Ohio and that I'll get to meet them in February.
We have a few. My first guest, John Pasternak, is in Cleveland.
Right.
Yep.
Very good.
All right. So, sorry, I don't know why I just paused there. How can people get in touch with you?
So I'm pretty active on Twitter at Aaron J. Given, Given. And if an email is always great, ajgiven@gmail.com. And I do have a website that I mostly forget to update, but you could reach me through that, aaronjgiven.com.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, it was a pleasure, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.